Stephen Callahan survived 76 days alone in the Atlantic Ocean. By day 30, he had started talking to the raft. By day 50, he stopped believing anyone was coming. And somewhere in the darkness beneath him, something kept circling at night. This is not a story about the ocean. This is a story about what happens to a human mind when everything is stripped away, everything, and what remains when there is nothing left to hold on to. January 29th, 1982, North Atlantic, 2 a.m. Stephen Callahan woke to a sound he had never heard before. Not waves, not wind, something structural, something final. Water, inside the hull, rising fast. He had seconds. He grabbed the emergency raft, a sleeping bag, a spear gun, 6 days of food, and threw himself into the black Atlantic as the Napoleon solo folded beneath the surface and vanished. 12 seconds, maybe less, then silence. He floated in the dark, gripping a 6-foot rubber tube, listening to the emptiness where his boat had just been. 800 miles from the Canary Islands, 3,000 miles from the American coast. Water temperature cold enough to kill him if he stayed in it. He pulled himself onto the raft and looked at the horizon in every direction. Nothing. In every direction. Nothing. He told himself ships crossed these waters. He told himself someone would find him within days. He told himself this was survivable. He was right about one thing. Day 2. The sun rose and converted the raft into an oven. By noon, his lips had split. His tongue began swelling. He was surrounded by more water than most humans ever see in a lifetime, and none of it was drinkable. He rationed his 6 days of food with military discipline, stretched it, recalculated. He had maybe 10 days before starvation became the primary threat. He needed to learn to spear fish from a moving inflatable raft immediately, without instruction, without failure. He taught himself by failing repeatedly, leaning over the edge, arms submerged, hand completely still, waiting. The first day, nothing. The second day, nothing. The fish moved faster than his reflexes. His hands shook from dehydration. His vision crossed from sun exposure. On day 4, he drove the spear through his first fish. He held it against his chest with both arms, closed his eyes. He didn't feel victory. He felt something he couldn't name, like the ocean had extended him just enough rope to keep going. Exactly enough. Measured carefully. The nights were different from anything he had prepared for. When the sun dropped, the temperature dropped with it. The raft had no insulation, nothing between him and the cold Atlantic air but a salt-soaked sleeping bag and whatever heat his body could still generate. He curled into himself and tried to sleep. And then on night 5, he felt it. A bump from below, then another, slower. He looked over the edge into the dark water. Shapes, moving in wide, patient circles. Fins cutting the surface without sound. Sharks, not one, several. They orbited the raft in slow rotation, occasionally rising to press against the underside. He could feel their mass through 6 inches of rubber, hear the sound of cartilage contacting the inflated tube. He pulled his hands inside and lay completely still. He counted them to stay calm. 1, 2, 3, 4. He counted them every night after that. By day 12, the food was gone. He was surviving entirely on what the ocean chose to give him. Some days he caught enough. Some days nothing came, and he sat in the dead heat with his hands in his lap and felt his body beginning to consume itself from the inside. Muscle first, then thought. By day 20, the thinking changed. He would begin a sentence in his mind and lose it before it ended. Words arrived slower. Connections between ideas stretched thin. He kept his logbook because the logbook was evidence. Proof of a continuous person existing across sequential days. The early entries were clean, structured. The handwriting of a man expecting rescue. By the 3rd week, the handwriting had changed entirely. Letters uneven, sentences shortened. Some entries just a number and a condition. Some entries were a single word, alive. And then around day 28, without deciding to, Stephen Callahan began talking out loud, not to himself, not to anyone. He narrated, described everything he did as he did it, checking the solar still, patching the raft, watching the horizon, out loud, full sentences to the empty ocean, because silence had become dangerous. Not physically, psychologically. When complete silence surrounds you long enough, it stops feeling like quiet. It starts feeling like erasure, like without another voice confirming your existence, you begin dissolving at the edges, like reality requires a witness to stay real. Talking was how he stayed solid. Then on day 38, he saw a ship. He lit a flare, stood on the raft, arms over his head, screaming at a vessel close enough to see individual lights along its hull. He screamed until his voice tore, held the flare burning until it burned out. The ship did not turn. He watched its lights shrink and disappear over the horizon. Then he sat down, and for a long time, he simply did not move. Day 43. The hallucination began quietly. He was lying on his back watching clouds when he heard it. A voice, calm. Behind him, he turned. Nobody. He sat up and looked in every direction across the flat, empty water. Nothing. He told himself it was dehydration, sun exposure, sleep deprivation. He told himself this rationally out loud, calmly, like a doctor explaining symptoms to a patient. But that night, the voice came back. Not words, exactly. More like a presence, a sense of someone sitting at the other end of the raft, watching him. He could almost see the shape of it in his peripheral vision if he didn't look directly at it. He stopped looking directly at it because the thing is, and this is the part that is almost impossible to explain, it wasn't entirely unwelcome. After 43 days alone, the hallucination of company was better than the reality of none. He started talking to it. He knew it wasn't real. Some part of him knew, but another part, the part that had been alone longer than any human being, is designed to be alone. That part didn't care about the distinction. He told it about his life, his plans, what he was going to eat when he reached land. He described entire meals in detail, the specific weight of a glass of cold water, the sound of another person breathing in a room. He talked until he fell asleep, and when he woke, it was gone. Day 50. He saw another ship. He lit his second-to-last flare, waved, screamed, watched. The ship changed course slightly. His heart collapsed upward into his throat. Then it changed back and continued past. He sat in the dark for a very long time after that. Not moving, not writing, not talking. He wrote in the logbook, "I am already dead. What is left is just a question of when." He stared at the sentence, read it twice, then crossed it out, wrote beneath it in unsteady letters, "Not yet." Tore the page out, threw it into the ocean. The ocean kept escalating as if it had a schedule. Day 55. The raft began losing pressure, slow leak in the lower tube. He found it by touch in the dark, patched it with emergency tape while the water rose to his knees inside the raft. Pumped it back manually. Pumped it again 4 hours later. Day 61. The solar still broke, his only reliable source of fresh water. Without it, 3 days, maybe 2 in the direct sun. He sat with the broken components in his lap. He fixed it with cloth, with improvised components, with the specific kind of engineering that only becomes possible when the alternative is death, and your hands still remember how to work, even when your mind has started coming apart at the seams. He drank that night. His weight had dropped by 1/3. His skin had been destroyed by 36 days of continuous saltwater contact. Salt sores covered every surface. The skin on his knuckles had split and would not heal because it was never dry and never would be. Day 70. The water changed color slightly. Day 72. He caught 3 fish in a single hour and ate until he felt something faintly resembling full. Day 74. He stopped writing single words. He wrote 3 full sentences. The current is pulling east. The birds are back. I think I might make it. He stared at what he had written. It was the first time in 20 days that he had thought that sentence and believed it. On the morning of day 76, a fishing vessel off the coast of Guadeloupe noticed something in the water. A small orange shape drifting slowly. And above it, circling in a lazy patient formation, a cloud of seabirds that had been following him for days, feeding on his scraps, marking his position to anyone who thought to look up. The signal fire he never built. When the fishermen pulled alongside, they found a man who barely had enough mass to cast a shadow. He was airlifted to a hospital in Guadeloupe. The nurses remembered him later not because of his condition, but because of how he was when he arrived. Calm in a way that was different from shock. Calm in a way that suggested something internal had been reorganized rather than broken. He didn't cry. He asked for water, drank it slowly, looked out the window at the ocean for a long time without speaking. When journalists found him and asked the question they all wanted answered, he was quiet before responding. He said the ocean had not broken him, but it had emptied him. Every assumption he had carried about what he needed, about what comfort meant, about what a human being required to remain a human being. The ocean had drawn it out of him slowly over 76 days and left behind something smaller and much harder to destroy. He said he came back knowing that almost everything he thought was necessary wasn't. He went back to sailing. Not immediately, but eventually. Because the ocean that tried to kill him was also the only place he had ever been forced to answer the question most people spend their entire lives successfully avoiding. Not what do you want? Not what do you have? But what are you? What remains when everything else is removed? His answer was the raft, the logbook, the crossed out sentence, the voice he talked to in the dark that wasn't there, the fish held against his chest, the flares burned at ships that never turned. What remained was someone who refused. Not heroically, not dramatically. Just quietly, daily, relentlessly. Refused. That's what 76 days alone in the Atlantic teaches you. Not how to survive the ocean. How to survive the version of yourself that wants to stop. Tonight you'll sleep in a bed. You'll have water when you want it. Warmth, light, the sound of other people existing somewhere nearby. And somewhere in the Atlantic, the same dark water is still moving, still circling, still completely indifferent to whether you ever understand what it cost one man to cross it on a piece of rubber with a broken solar still and a voice that wasn't there. He made it back, but some part of him never left.